Kasafian to explain about the
Yes, sure.
process. Okay, thank you. Come on, Dr. Sarah Kasafian.
You're most welcome. Good afternoon to our friends in Indonesia and good morning to our friends in Iran.
Yes.
Today, I want to talk about Iranian EFL and Malaysian ESL university students' use of language learning strategies. So I guess that you can see the first slide, can't you?
Yes, yes, I can see.
Okay, that's it. So, do you also have my picture, Mr. Razi?
Yes, I can see your picture as well. The camera.
You can see my picture, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, in the last 30 years, there has been a noticeable shift towards learning, and learners actually are given more importance. The emphasis on empowering students and learner autonomy is gaining momentum in the field of language teaching. Language learners are no longer regarded as passive recipients of instruction. Rather, they are deemed active participants in the process of language learning. It's so vital for learners to make suitable use of language learning strategies. Now let's go to the next slide. Okay. Learners who have the ability to make good use of language learning strategies are more predisposed to succeed, according to Muliani 2020, Zimsek and Balban 2010. Motivated learners usually employ more strategies than less motivated ones, and their choices of strategies are heavily influenced by their purpose of learning and language. And this point has also been underlined by Shi 2017. Successful language learners constantly use a greater variation of language learning strategies, as pointed out by Rubai and Hashim 2019, Ang et al. 2017, Nasri et al. 2016. Presently, two main types of strategies have been identified in the field of second and foreign language acquisition. The first type is communication strategies. The second type, learning strategies. I guess that you know the purpose of communication strategies. As the name shows, it is to actually hold conversations and communications among interlocutors to get meaning across them. And these strategies are mostly used in the process of transferring message to other people, as this point has also been highlighted by Iani 2007. However, learning strategies are more associated with the process of receiving messages from other people and have to do with the input received. Rubin 1987 defines communication strategies as those strategies which are used by a learner to promote and continue communication with other people, with other interlocutors. While Taron 1980 believes that communication strategies are mutual attempts of two interlocutors to agree on a meaning. In this slide, you can see Taron's taxonomy of strategy. He divides the communication strategies into 3 types. The first type is avoidance. The second type is paraphrase. And the third type is borrowing or conscious transfer. Now, let's see what avoidance is. So avoidance is actually divided into 2 parts. The first one is topic avoidance. For example, the learner tries not to talk about the concepts for which the target language item or structure is not known. So this person tries to avoid the topic, tries not to talk about it. The second classification of avoidance is message abandonment. The learner begins to talk about a concept but is unable to continue and stops in mid-utterance. For example, the learner starts talking about scaffolding and says, you know, scaffolding, and then suddenly stops because he doesn't know about it and he's not so much familiar with the concept, so inside the utterance he stops. Then we have paraphrase. This is the second classification of communication strategy. Paraphrase is divided into approximation, word coinage, and circumlocution. For example, for approximation, which is the first one, the learner makes use of a single target language vocabulary item or structure, which the learner knows that it is not correct, but which shares enough semantic features in common with the desired item to satisfy the speaker. For example, he wants to say water pipe, but he doesn't know the item. So instead of water pipe, he says pipe. So pipe is used instead of water pipe. The next type of paraphrase, which is again another communication strategy, is word coinage. The learner tries to make up a new word. Why? Because he or she wants to communicate a desired concept. For example, the learner says airball for balloon. So he invents a new word. Okay. Then we have circumlocution. So instead of using the appropriate target language item, the learner tries to describe the characteristics or the elements of the object or action. Now, we can have different examples. For example, a person who has become dependent on a chemical substance. Which term do we use for this person? Addict. So this person, the learner, does not know the meaning of addict. So he or she says, actually, you know, he's a person who he has become dependent on a substance. So he tries to communicate this way. The third kind of communication strategies is borrowing and conscious transfer. We can divide this type into literal, translation, language switch, appeal for assistance, and mime. For literal translation, for example, the learner translates word for word from the native language. For example, in Persian language, he wants to say pass away, which means to die. For example, he wants to say he passed away. So in Persian structure, we use something like he gave his life to you. It means that when we are talking about a person who died and we say now that he's dead, now actually your life is lying. This is a polite form to say he passed away. So the person uses this Persian structure for that. So this is the literal translation. Then we have language switch. The learner uses the native language term without bothering to translate. For example, a learner is a Turkish student. So instead of using caterpillar, he switches to his own language and uses turtle. Or, for example, in his language, he has the word balloon, and he uses this for the English balloon. So he switches to another language, his first language, actually. Then we have appeal for assistance. The learner asks for the correct term. For example, what is this? What called? So tries to seek the help of other people. Then we have mine. So the learner tries to use some nonverbal strategies in place of a lexical item or action. For example, he wants to show the word applause. He starts or she starts clapping his or her hands to illustrate the word. Now, a student, I want you to answer. It's actually a review of this part. And if I can see in the chat box. So a student uses an alternative word which expresses the meaning of a lexical item as closely as possible. He cannot remember the word sailboat and he uses ship instead. Which strategy is he using? So you can write down in the chat section if I can have a view of it. Dear participants, you can write it. So which strategy, which communication strategy is he using from the things that I told you? These are the strategies. Let me show you the strategies. Okay. So you can write it in the chat box. So I told you that this student uses another word. He wants to say sailboat, but because he doesn't remember it, he uses the word ship. So which strategy, class? Yes, approximation, correct. So you can write down in the chat box to me. Okay, so approximation is used. Yes. So I can see your answers. Now, let me talk about another sentence. And that is, while a Persian student is speaking English, she cannot use the Persian word talash for the English word effort. And she tries to shift to her own language. Actually, she tries to make use of her own language item. So which strategy is she using from these strategies that you can see from these communication strategies? So let me give you a clue. It is among the borrowing or conscious transfer strategies. It is one of them. So which strategy? You can type it. Okay. Yeah, this is literal. Actually, thank you, Mr. Davik. It can be a literal translation. You know, He uses the term from his own language. So which one do you think is the best classification for that? He shifts to his own language or to her own language. So from borrowing and conscious transfer, which one is the best one? Maybe you can write it in the chat box for me. Yes. Yes. Correct. That's very good. Very good, Mr. David. Thank you. Language switch. Excellent. Now, all right. While communication strategies do not directly deal with the process of language learning, learning strategies can be directly related to this process. In Oxford's definition, which was provided in the year 1990, language learning strategies are specific actions which are taken by learners to make learning easier, faster, more effective, more self-directed, more enjoyable, and more transferable to new situations. Learning strategies can be divided into two types: direct learning strategies and indirect learning strategies, as you can see in this slide. Direct learning strategies directly involve the target language, while indirect learning strategies pave the way for language learners without actually directly involving the target language. Different researchers have classified language learning strategies into different categories. Among some of the more common categories include cognitive, metacognitive, communicative, and socio-affective. Oxford 1990 classifies learning strategies into the following 6 types. The first type includes memory strategies. As you can see the word memory, you can guess that these strategies are actually used for what? For remembering new information, giving it when needed. So they help you enter new information into memory storage and get it back when it is needed. Then we have compensation strategies and cognitive strategies. Now let me explain about the cognitive strategies. These strategies new information with existing schemata. And these strategies are responsible for deep processing and receiving and producing messages in the target language. We also have compensation strategies. Okay, as you can see, the word compensation is a clue. It tells you that when you are faced with some kind of deficiency in the process of learning and you have some gap in current language knowledge, these strategies are of great help to you because they compensate for your lack of knowledge. Now let's go to indirect strategies. So memory and compensation strategies are labeled together as direct strategies. We also have indirect ones, indirect language learning strategies. The first type is metacognitive strategy. These strategies are used for organizing, focusing, and evaluating your learning. Then we have the affective strategies. They are used for affection, emotions, attitudes, etc. So when you want to handle your emotions or your attitudes, your feelings, you make use of affective strategies when you want to learn a language. And the last type is social strategies. As you can guess, these strategies which learners use to cooperate with others in the learning process are also of overriding importance. All right, why are language learning strategies and the use of them important? If you know, and why should we study this subject? If you know to use the appropriate strategy, this is one of the preconditions of successful learning and provides you with greater autonomy, as has been maintained by G 2010. Many students and many instructors unfortunately do not know which strategies are used inadequately by their students in the process of learning and which strategies are used at a satisfactory level. By investigating the learning strategy used among students, Iranian and Malaysian practitioners of language teaching can identify the aspects of language learning strategies which require more strategy training. Analysis of the specific strategies which are used by students of the two countries can also be revealing. If strategies used by students of different social contexts are examined, some insights could be gained into the characteristics of learners from different backgrounds, as also claimed by Oxford and highlighted by her in 1991. Okay, can you see the next slide? Yes? Okay, good. So let's go to the conceptual framework of the study. This study, which is the result of 4 consecutive data collection procedures, gather rich and first-hand observational data at research sites in Iran and Malaysia. Although quantitative data were also collected via questionnaires for 4 semesters, observations were also conducted. Why? Because we wanted to enrich and support findings of the other data. Interview studies with the students of different countries regarding their use of language learning strategies are actually scant in number. They are few in number. So this study intended to examine the patterns of language learning strategy use, namely memory strategies, cognitive strategies, compensation strategies, metacognitive strategies, affective strategies, and social strategies among students of different countries. And in this case, among students of Iran and Malaysia. These patterns were all in the realm of qualitative data and emerged via the analysis of qualitative data. You know, there are many factors which can affect the use of strategies, including context. In this study, the learner's background is taken into consideration. such as social context, which is EFL versus ESL. What else? Gender, male students versus female ones. Age. So we classified age and categorized it into three categories of below 20, between 20 to 23, and above 23. Further's educational qualification with university qualifications versus without university qualifications. Again, mother's educational qualification with university qualifications versus without any university qualifications. What else? Academic achievement, A, B, or C. You know, in Malaysia, we had A, B, or C. In Iran, actually, the cumulative grade point average, which has been used as an index of academic achievement, includes 0 to 20 points. So the students who got a cumulative grade point average of 17 to 20 are, out of 20, of course, are considered as A, so labeled as A, as their academic achievement. Those students whose averages were between 14 to 16.99 were labeled as B, and those students whose averages were between 12 to 13.99 out of 20 were labeled as C. So what else did we consider year of study? And that included sophomores, juniors, and freshmen. Also, we used professional status, and that included with an occupation versus without an occupation. You know, some of the Iranian students didn't have any occupation. Some had some kind of occupation or part-time job. And that was also the case with Malaysian students. When instructors are provided the information about the nature of strategies which are used by their students, together with the information about frequency of use of language learning strategies, they will know how to help their students and in which areas their students need more help and support. The frequent use of language learning strategies may lead to the automatic use of them without conscious attention. So what will be the result? Yes, this enabled learners to make use of these strategies unconsciously and without causing the least diversion. In this study, students from two social contexts were compared regarding their use of the overall language learning strategies, direct strategies, and indirect strategies, and the sixth strategy in the inventories of memory, cognitive, compensation, metacognitive, affective, and social strategies were used. In addition, the types of strategies which were used by Malaysian students and Iranian students were identified. Now, let's go to the theoretical framework of our study. The theoretical framework of our study is taken from Oxford, 1990, and it is displayed in this figure. Okay, when you look at it, what comes to your mind? You know, we have memory, cognitive compensation, metacognitive, affective, and social strategies. So what comes to your mind? When you look at these strategies? Correct. Yes. you can guess that these strategies are in some way related to one another. Okay. Oxford provides an analogy to clarify the mutual support that exists among elements of this network. So she likens direct strategies which deal with the new language to the performer in a stage play. So the performer, which are direct strategies, work closely with the director of the play. What is the director of the play? Correct. Indirect strategies. So direct and indirect strategies support each other. And the 6 strategy groups, the 3 direct strategies and the 3 indirect ones interact with each other. In other words, all the other 6 strategies, whether direct or indirect, are in a network of what? Correct. You guessed correctly. Close relations, close connections. And what do they form together? They form language learning strategies. What will be the result? They pave the way, what? The process of language learning. Yes, that's it. Now, actually, I wanted to ask you, so I explained about different language learning strategies. I want to ask you, which language strategy is used? Now, please listen to what I read to you and tell me, you can write it in the chat box, which language learning strategy is the person using. A student asks her peers for evaluating her. Moreover, she sets some goals and she tries to listen to her classmates' explanations. So you can see evaluating, setting goals, listening to classmates' explanations. So please write it to me in the chat box. That will be great. What kind of strategies, what kind of language learning strategies is she using? So let me show you the different strategies. Maybe you can guess which strategies she's using. Have a look at it. Any idea? Please type it in the chat box. So I'm waiting for your responses. Is it memory? Is it cognitive? Is it compensation? Or metacognitive, affective, or social strategies? Which one? Can you see? We do some kind of evaluation. You see, because we do evaluation, we do some kind of monitoring evaluation, making some judges. So it is, Mr. Davik, it is one kind of indirect strategies. Maybe you can write down. I received another answer. Yes, very good. Yes, very good. Mr. Muhammad and Mr. Davik both answered correctly. Excellent. Yes, metacognitive strategies are being used. Excellent. Now, look at another one. A student tried to form some mental images so that she would better remember the main points his professor was explaining. So which language learning strategy is he using? So please write it in the chat box. So look at it. Mental images, remembering. So which of these strategies I give you a clue. It's MI, direct strategies. So which of these direct strategies? Yes, very well. Yes, excellent. Memory strategies. That's it. Yeah. Why? Because there were some clues. We said this person used some kind of mental images because he wanted to remember what his actually lecturer telling. I guess in Malaysian and Indonesian, the word lecturer or professor must be pensyara. Am I right? As far as I can remember, pensyara, yeah? I hope that you have pronounced it correctly. So maybe you can write in the chat box to me. Okay. So language learning strategy is used. A university student schemes and scans the reading passages. Okay, first, do you know what the difference between skimming and scanning is? Any idea? Maybe you can write it in the chat box for me. What's the difference between skimming and scanning? Okay. So, is getting specific information from the text. Exactly. Yes, very well. Very nice. Yes, thank you, Mr. David. Thank you. Uh, is that Mr. Jimmy? Yeah. Skimming is about getting the main idea. Yeah, correct. So when we want to look for the main idea to get the whole impression, the main idea, we skim a text. So we read it for getting the main idea. Then for scanning, we look for specific information. For example, I read a novel. I don't know what time the main character was born, in which year. So I read the whole text quickly. I read the whole novel. I try to find this specific information. His, for example, year of birth. So what am I doing? I am scanning. Okay. So a university student uses these strategies. He skims, he scans the reading passage. So from these strategies, let me bring them to you. Which strategy, which language learning strategies is he using? Any idea? Maybe you can write it to me. Actually, it is among which strategies? Direct strategies, but which of them? Which one? Which of the direct strategies? Very good. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. David. Cognitive strategies. Yes, that's it. So, cognitive strategies. Now, let's go to the objectives of the study. This study tried to investigate the effects of gender, age, year of study, cumulative grade point average, professional status, social context, father's level of education, mother's level of education on what? On the use of language learning strategies among Iranian and Malaysian students. The other objective was to find what the range and frequency of strategy use among Iranian and Malaysian students. The third one was to determine the types of classroom learning strategies which were used by students of different countries. And the fourth type was to specify the models. Which models? Models of strategy use as revealed by the respondents of the study in the interviews. So by analyzing the responses in the interview section, we could achieve this study. We could specify these models. Now, which research questions we found? We sought to answer whether there is a difference in the use of these strategies. So is there a difference in the use of the 6 strategy categories? Overall language learning strategies and direct versus indirect learning strategies among selected Iranian and Malaysian students of different gender, age, father's educational qualification, mother's educational qualification, academic achievement as shown by their CGPA, cumulative grade point average, professional status, and social context. The second research question was, what is the range and frequency of strategy use among Iranian and Malaysian university students? Our third question was, what are the types of classroom language learning strategies used by Iranian and Malaysian students? And the fourth type was, what are the strategy models of Iranian and Malaysian students as revealed by the interviews? Now, let's go to the use of language learning strategies among successful versus unsuccessful learners. As you can guess, successful and unsuccessful learners must be different in their use of strategies. Successful learners usually have the ability to make use of effective strategies, and how? In a systematic way. Nam and Oxford 1998 actually claimed that unsuccessful learners do not use fewer learning strategies than their successful counterparts. Rather, they use language learning strategies in a haphazard fashion and in a way which is unrelated to their learning style. I'm sure you know about the learning styles. Okay, can you tell me how many types of learning styles we have? One of the types is visual. What is the other one? Auditory. Yeah, auditory style. The other one, kinesthetic. And the next one, tactile. So these are learning styles actually. So imagine a person has visual style. So he should make use of, for example, some strategies related to miming, etc. But if a person has mostly auditory styles of learning, he should actually hear things to remember them in a better way. And this person all the time tries to listen and do some kind of listening. But sometimes if he, for example, tries to use some kind of strategies like miming, so this is not so much suitable for this person. So something which is important is to use the strategy systematically and in a way which is related to your learning style, because that would be of great help. Muhammad Amin MB enumerated the characteristics of successful versus unsuccessful learners with regard to the use of language learning strategies. Now, successful language learners, according to Muhammad Amin MB, who is an expert in language learning strategies in Malaysia, seek and try to take some opportunities to use the target language, while unsuccessful ones depend on classroom activities a lot. So, which one do you think relies heavily on the textbook? Which one, successful or unsuccessful ones? Only sticks to the textbook. Which one, successful or unsuccessful? Yes, correct. So you guessed correctly. Unsuccessful learners, very good, very good. Unsuccessful learners rely heavily on the textbook, while successful learners make use of a wide variety of target language inputs. They use various inputs. So which one is highly dependent on the teacher? Any idea? Successful one or unsuccessful one? Yes, you guessed correctly. The unsuccessful ones, the unsuccessful learners actually are highly dependent on the teacher, while the successful ones do not depend solely on the teacher. Successful learners take advantage of the media which are available to them, while the unsuccessful ones do not use the available media. Successful learners read English materials extensively, while the unsuccessful ones do not read English materials. Yes, thank you, thank you. Our friend Tahir. Thanks a lot. So which one uses a fairly limited range and type of strategies? Successful or unsuccessful? Limited ones, limited range of strategies, limited types of strategies. Which one? Very well, you guessed correctly, the unsuccessful ones. So what can successful learners do? They use a wide range of strategies. Now, various factors can affect the use of the strategies. And these factors include gender, learner beliefs, social context, year of study, age, etc. Many studies investigated the relationship between gender and the use of language learning strategies. For example, Kamarol Shukri in 2010 did some kind of studies in this regard. Wharton 2003, Tantu G et al. 2010. So social context is also an influential factor. English as a second language and English as a foreign language, we deal with some aspects. Although these two are of different contexts, there may be some common features among them. Studies conducted in ESL contexts encompassed the works of experts such as Muhammad Amin MB, Klein 2006, Oxford 2020, Oxford et al. 1990. And in EFL context, some studies were carried out by researchers such as Alawi and Kayvan Pana 2003, Al-Khatib 2004, Rahimi and Riazi 2005, Riazi 2007, Mulyani 2020, who was from Indonesia. Now, this research made use of a mixed method approach. According to Sindersticker-Netto 2010, adding qualitative flesh to quantitative bones is a good strategy to overcome many problems in research. Quantitative research can uncover some kind of relationships among variables, and qualitative research would provide what? A deeper understanding. Both types of research offer some advantages and some disadvantages. So we have some merits and some demerits. And to counter the weak points of each of the approaches, the viable solution is the use of mixed method. What does mixed method do? It blends the elements of both quantitative research and the elements of what? Qualitative research. This approach takes a more balanced method to research and help investigators to conflate the qualitative and quantitative procedure in a way that works best for the research at hand. All participants were undergraduate students. They differed with regard to age, gender, cumulative grade point average, year, father and mother's educational qualifications, professional status, and social context. So on the whole, English literature students of Shiraz University and English literature students of University Kebangsaan, Malaysia were involved. A total of 62 students, which included 32 Iranian students and 30 Malaysian students, participated in the pilot phase of the study. And we involved 159 students, 91 Iranian students and 64 Malaysian students, which together forms 150 students, were involved in the field study. For the pilot phase, the participants were divided into 3 groups: freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. One of these units was randomly selected, and that was freshmen. And one class was pilot tested in Iran, and one class of freshmen in Malaysia. In the pilot phase, all the students of first years of these 2 classes studying English literature were included, and multi-stage random sampling was used. In this sampling procedure, the population is first divided into smaller groups, and the random sample of these regions is actually collected. In the second stage, a random sample of the selected group is taken. Since the researcher chose the students of a specific major, literature in English, studying at BA level, and from this population randomly selected freshman students, whereby in the first stage, it was we stratified based on major, and then we stratified again based on year. On the whole, 32 freshmen from Iran and 30 freshmen from University Kebangsaan, Malaysia were selected for the pilot phase. They were all given the SEAL questionnaire, For the observations, the researcher took some field notes and wrote down whatever went on in the class. She also used video cameras to help her enrich her field notes after each class. For the pilot phase of interviews, actually, I selected 5 Iranian students in Malaysia and 5 in Iran. For the actual study, a cluster sampling was used. Okay, you know, cluster sampling is a sampling procedure in which we consider the entire population of interest and we divide it into groups or into clusters. And a random sample of these clusters is selected. Each cluster must be mutually exclusive. Together, these clusters must include the whole population. After clusters are selected, all units within the clusters are chosen. As all the units within a cluster are selected, the sampling procedure in this study is one-stage cluster sampling. This kind of sampling procedure offers 3 advantages of feasibility, economy, and reduced variability. As undergraduate literature in English students of Shiraz University and UKM were involved in this study, we divided the entire population into clusters of freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. Cluster sampling was used, and one class was chosen from students of first year, one class from students of second year, one from third year, both in Iran and in Malaysia. On the whole, 6 classes were involved in the actual study and 2 classes in the pilot phase. The necessary data were collected through 3 main instruments: strategy inventory for language learning, non-participant observations, and interviews. Okay, dear Mr. Davik, if you want to talk about,
yes. I think you can stop sharing, yeah.
Share, yes, sure.
Okay, I'd like to explain to all participants, yeah, about our journal, yeah,
Yes, sure.
of vision. This is the, let me share screen now. Yeah, this one. Yeah, actually vision, we invite all participants here to submit the manuscripts here to Vision Journal. Vision Journal for Language and Foreign Language Learning. We usually publish twice a year in April and October. And actually this journal has been indexed in DOAG, Directory of Open Access Journals, yeah, and then in SINTA, in other these journals is an international single blind peer-reviewed and open access journal. Yeah, if you have the articles on foreign language acquisition, translation and language learning, foreign language learning and identity, gender and equality in English language learning, foreign language skills, linguistics and English language learning, literature and English language learning, and foreign language teaching and learning, you are welcome, yeah, to submit your manuscript. And then before authors submit the manuscript, they can download the article template. Yeah, this is the article template to make sure that your article has already used, yeah, our template. Yeah, and then you have to read the author guideline. Yeah, this is the author guideline that for example, the title, and then the abstract, the introduction, method, finding and discussion, and conclusion references. Yeah, And then you have also have here submission preparation checklist. Number one, that you have to make sure that the submission has not been previously published, nor is it before another journal for considerations. Yeah. And then the submission file is in OpenOffice, Microsoft Word, RTF, and Word Perfect document file format. Yeah. And then number three, Mendeley has been used for citation and references in the manuscript. And article template has been used in the manuscript as well. Yeah, this is the article template. And we have actually I'm the chief editor of this journal, yeah, and then the managing editor Agus Prayogo. Now he is in Australia, yeah, and then Dwi Arni. This is also some of the editor, and we have also proofreaders. Yeah, actually authors have the service of free of charge for proofreading. Yeah, we hire professional proofreading. So if you articles, what is it in the reviewing process, and then you revise the manuscript, and we will send your manuscript to our proofreaders. Yeah, so and it is free. Actually, it is free. We have three actually: Ardian, Wahyu Setiawan, Nanang, and also Reza Kafipur. Yeah, we have three proofreaders. And we have also reviewers. Yeah, our reviewers are from there's from Iran, and then from Malaysia, Ravizah Rowland, and then we have also from Australia, Market Karen, and then from Indonesia, Professor Tengku Zulfikar, yeah, from UIN Araniri Banda Aceh, yeah, and also other reviewers. Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah. So we hope that all participants, yeah, at least you can submit your manuscript. Actually, in the last issue, we don't have Indonesian authors here. Yeah, we hope that Indonesian authors can submit the manuscript, especially the highly qualified manuscript. Yeah, so we can take it into consideration. Okay, I think that's all. Ms. Sarah Kasafiani.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ella. So do you have my screen, Mr. David?
Not yet. Oh, let me.
Okay.
Share screen. Yeah.
All right. So you can see my screen, can't you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's great. So thank you so much, Mr. David. Thanks a lot. Now, so I told you that we carried out our study in two countries, Iran and Malaysia. And these professors were of great help to me. I would like to thank them here before continuing this presentation. One of them was Dr. Noraini, the smiling lady on the left, Dr. Noraini Muhammad Yusuf. She was of great help to me. Of course, these are not the only professors whose classes I observed or I did interviews or actually questionnaires. There were some more professors whose pictures I didn't have. So the first one on the left is Dr. Noraini Muhammad Yusuf. I really appreciate her classes. I remember the days she asked her students to actually pick some leaves because she was a professor of literature, and she asked him to write a poem about the leaf and about the environment, the surrounding environment, and that was really great to me. The next one from Malaysia, Dr. Raihana Maidi. I can guess that you can see it on the right side up there. So she tried to stimulate her students. She motivated her students a lot, and I learned many things from her. On the left, you can see Dr. Mahbube Saadat. I actually observed her writing classes, and she was a disciplined lady and held good classes. And the one on the right is Dr. Dr. Rahimi. And this Dr. Rahimi had some conversation classes, whose classes I did some, whose classes I did some kind of interviews, observations, etc. But as I told you, there were some more professors, for example, Dr. Zuria from Malaysia, and this lady also held very nice classes and did lots of teamwork in her classes. We also had Dr. Atashi from Iran, and she was also an English literature professor and held some interesting classes. So before I continue, I wanted to thank these experts. Now, the reliability of the questionnaire was established by coefficient alpha and was 0.93 for Iranian students and 0.91 for Malaysian students. The analysis of observations and interviews revealed 114 main themes for the observations and 78 main themes for the interviews. Categorization of themes were given to 3 experts in the field, and Cohen's kappa, which showed the inter-rater reliability, was 0.81 for observations and 0.82 for interviews. To check the validity, seal was given to a number of professors and experts in the field, and they were asked to check the suitability of contents. Member checking was also used for checking the validity of data revealed from interviews. As for the observations, a sample of observational video from each class together with the transcriptions were given to experts to check the content. Another method to increase the rigor in our research was triangulation. You know, triangulation means the use of different ways. In this research, we used questionnaires, prolonged observations, and interviews in different contexts. Now, let's go to the inventory. This pen and paper survey consisted of 50 items to which students were supposed to respond on a 5-point Likert scale ranging from never to always. So, as you can see, never or almost true of me, usually not true of me, somewhat true of me, usually true of me, and always or almost always true of me. Oxford's classification of language learning strategies encompasses 6 aspects of the language learning strategies. It is considered as the most comprehensive classification to date, according to some experts such as Ellis. Cognitive strategies actually related to how students think about their learning and were mostly used for connecting new information with existing schemata. So 9 of the questions were related to cognitive strategies. Memory strategies, which incorporated around 9 items, yes, related to how students remember language and mostly used for entering new information into their memory storage and retrieving information when it was needed. 6 of the items were related to compensation strategies, which help students to make up for limited knowledge and fill the gaps in communication. 9 of the items of the questionnaire were related to metacognitive strategies, and they actually talked about how students manage their learning and were used for organizing, planning, focusing, and evaluating learning. 6 of the items were related to affective strategies. They related to students' feelings, and they mostly applied for handling emotions and attitudes. 6 of the items of the questionnaire were related to social strategies, and they help students learn through interaction. These strategies were used mostly for cooperating with other students, facilitating interactions, etc. Now, I put some of the questions of the 50 items seal. These are the first 5 questions. So this is the English-Persian version. The translation into Persian was done by Dehkan a few years ago. So we used both the English questions and the Persian questions so that if the students are not excellent in English, and this translation can be of some help to them. As you can see, I think of the relationship between what I already know and new things I learned in English. So after I read these 5 questions, you can tell me they are related to which strategies, maybe. I use new English words in a sentence so that I can remember them. I connect to the sound of a new English word and image or picture of the word to help me remember the word. I remember a new English word by making a mental image of the situation in which the word. I also used the Malay version, so some translation was done again about the first 5 questions. Now, maybe you can write it to me in the chat section, and I can see the chat section. You think these 5 questions, the first 5 questions of the questionnaire, are related to which strategies? Maybe you can write in the chat box for me. Cognitive, metacognitive, compensation, memory, affective, social, which ones? Maybe you can have a quick look at it and tell me to which. Yes. Maybe you can write it. Yes, correctly. So they are related to. Let me show you the actually list of these strategies. So to which ones? Then you see mental image, remembering. So which strategies? Very good. Memory strategies. Excellent. Well done. Yes. Thank you, Mr. David. Related to memory strategies. Now, Then we wanted to analyze the difference between groups on different variables. We used multiple analysis of variance. The influences of independent variables, which were gender, age, father and mother's, educational levels, occupation, year of study, and GPA, were examined on the 6 dependent variables of memory, cognitive, compensation, metacognitive, affective, and social strategies, together with, of course, the direct strategies, indirect strategies, and overall language learning strategies. When we wanted to do an analysis among students of various age groups, I mean, below 20, between 20 to 23 and above 23, on dependent variables, univariate analysis was conducted. You know, univariate analysis provides the proportional variance in the dependent variables that can actually be attributed to different variables, different levels of the independent variable. And before that, of course, we ran box M test and Leven's test to check the homogeneity of the error variances. And that, as it was okay, I mean, in the Leven's test was not statistically significant, we moved to Wilks-Lambda multivariate analysis and univariate analysis. It was revealed that the main effects of the dependent variables were significant for metacognitive strategies. The results are shown in the next slide. So I show you the results in the next slide. So you see, for metacognitive strategies, we have a p-value of 0.001. The results show that there were significant differences for the age variable on Iranian students' use of indirect strategies and overall language learning strategies in favor of younger students. Okay. Furthermore, there were significant year of study main effect in the use of metacognitive strategies and indirect strategies. So, freshmen obtained the best indices of strategy use with regard to metacognitive strategy. There were also significant academic achievement main effects in the use of cognitive, social, direct, and indirect strategies, and overall language learning strategies. I mean, students with highest GPA obtained the highest indices with regard to the use of these strategies, which I mentioned. Other differences regarding the variables of gender, age, parents' education, and professional status were not significant other differences. The results are shown in the next tables. The multivariate test of Wilks-Lambda yielded a significant Wilks of 0.89, and the p-value was 0.038, which is less than 0.05 for direct strategies, indirect strategies, and overall use of strategies. These findings are in congruence with what? With Zimsek and Balban's 2010 study, who reported that high achieving students use learning strategies more frequently. To analyze the variation between different groups and the differences, MANOVA was conducted. And the results of multivariate tests for the year variable showed a significant mainly for metacognitive strategies for Malaysian students. So can you see in this column, on the right column, significant section, metacognitive strategies, the significance is how much? 0.038. So statistically significant. MANOVA results of Malaysian students also revealed a significant main effect for metacognitive social strategies and indirect strategies in favor of students whose mother lacked university qualifications. So as you can see, we have a strategy used among Iranian and Malaysian students here. So which strategies did Iranian students use the highest as revealed from the results of the questionnaire? Yes, correct. So they made use of metacognitive strategies more than other strategies, and Iranians were high users of metacognitive strategies and medium users of the rest of strategies. All right. So you see, when we wanted to do some kind of classification, we also made use of Oxford's range. For example, Oxford said between this and this, they are used medium users. Between this and this score, they are used. If their mean is this and this, they are high users. So we noticed that Iranians are high users of metacognitive strategies, while Malaysian students were high users of metacognitive and social strategies. As for the rest of the strategies, they use them at a medium range. NVivo is a statistical software for the analysis of qualitative data, and it was used for the analysis of observation and interview data. Qualitative coding procedures of open coding, axial coding, and selective coding were conducted. Transcribed data were categorized through open coding procedures. The categories were then refined through axial coding, and some teams were obtained and they were connected, and major code categories were identified through selective coding procedure. Classroom observations helped the researcher to identify about the frequency of application of language learning strategies, and the most used and least used classroom language learning strategies were identified for Iranian and Malaysian students in observations too. So the results of observational data show that, again, Iranian students use metacognitive strategies more than other strategies inside classes. And Malaysian students used cognitive and affective strategies more than other strategies in their classes, as revealed from the observations. As you can see, the percentage of use of strategies are also given here. So metacognitive strategies were used as 24% of all the strategies, and for Iranian students and for Malaysian students, cognitive strategies were used at a 28% level. Okay, for observations in the main phase of the study, the classes were observed and video cameras were used, and we actually recorded what went on in the class and interactions of students and professor. But we chose, randomly selected 6 students in each class, and we specifically observed their behavior. So we jot down whatever they did inside the class. And also a whole trend was taken into consideration. So for the interview, we had a general interview guide for the pilot phase. For example, we asked questions: who has helped you most to improve your English? Do you prepare yourself for the exam? If yes, how? If you have a good proficiency in English, what does it result in? Do you see your lecturers after the class? Do you use a dictionary? What advice do you have for other students about the best way to learn English? And how do you improve your English? For the main phase of the interviews, we refined the questions. And we said one of the questions was, of course, the students provided with different answers. So we were given different answers with different students. Do you feel relaxed when using English? It means, are you afraid of making mistakes? So this question is related to affective domain, being relaxed, being afraid. So affective domain. Do you actually learn new English words or new expressions in a specific way? How do you learn? Which strategies do you use? So again, for learning new items, so it's related to memory strategies, memory domain. Do you prepare and practice for your lessons? If yes, how? So can you see preparing, practicing? These are all related to cognitive domain. The next question was, if you want to say something in English which you can't clearly express, what do you do? So maybe the strategies the person uses to compensate for her deficiencies in knowledge. So these are related to what? Compensation domain. Do you plan and evaluate your own learning? If yes, how? Again, this question is related to metacognitive domain. You remember we said planning, evaluating, etc. The next question was, whom do you ask to help you with your English? This question is related to the social domain. So whose cooperation you seek? So social strategies. And we also asked a general question: which aspects of the class do you like most and which aspects do you like least? Okay, I give you one of the questions which deal with memory strategies. The question was, how do you learn new English words or new English expressions? Which strategies do you use? So we use en vivo, and we noticed that memory strategies used by Iranian students and Malaysian students were a little different. For instance, one group said, by looking up in a dictionary, learning from situations in which I am, learning from the teacher, using the internet, using computer, picturing in the mind, using examples, memorizing words, learning from friends, learning from boards in the department, and using software. While Malaysian ones said by watching movies, some of them said learning from peers, talking with others, reading novels, doing some kind of revision, learning through the lecture, and searching in the dictionary. So, on the whole, 70 students were involved in the interviews, and NVivo showed 6 models for the strategy use. The 3 coding procedures revealed the major codes. Do you remember we talked about the major coding procedures of open, axial, and selective? So for compensation strategies, Iranian students had adjusting or approximating the message, using mime or gesture, using circumlocution or synonyms. So they provided some brief explanation or description of the item they wanted to explain, using some non-linguistic clues, some clues which are not related to language, maybe some kind of gestures, etc. However, Malaysian students provided some similar and some different ones. For example, the first 2, which were adjusting or approximating the message and using mime or gesture, were the same among the 2 groups, but Malaysian students maintained that they got help and they tried to increase linguistic knowledge to reach mastery in language, and they switched to their mother tongue. For memory strategies revealed from the interviews, we noticed that for Iranian students, using resources for learning and remembering words was predominant, and that was also the case with Malaysian students. For Iranian students, we had applying images and sounds and contextualizing, while Malaysian students talked about reviewing. Then for cognitive ones, both Iranian and Malaysian students stated that they practiced, they prepared, and created some kind of structure for input and output. As for affective strategies, the main codes which were found for Iranian students were feeling relaxed, showing a positive attitude or not showing a positive one, and that was also the case. However, one more code was found for Malaysian students, and that was feeling nervous. As for metacognitive codes, evaluating and arranging and planning learning were found for the students of both groups. However, for Iranian students, we found trying to get some kind of practice opportunities and overviewing and connecting with already known material. And that was not the case with Malaysian students. So this code was not found for them. With regard to social strategies, the main code which was found for both Iranian and Malaysian students was asking for clarification or verification, followed by asking for correction and asking for help. All right. Both Iranian and Malaysian students were high users of language learning strategies. In some respects, for example, they were high users of metacognitive strategies. And this was the shared feature because our results from our questionnaire show that they are high users of metacognitive strategies. They use them highly. The high use of metacognitive strategies among Iranian and Malaysian students is similar to that observed among students from other Asian countries, such as Japan, China, Korea, Palestine, and Taiwan, as reported in studies of Hanafiya 2021, Wafa Abu Shmais in Palestine 2003, and Oxford et al. 1990, etc. High use of metacognitive strategies is important in ESL and EFL learning, for they are the higher order executive skills that include planning, evaluating, and monitoring learning activities. Learning strategies such as metacognitive and cognitive strategies commonly used in both ESL context and EFL context should be explicitly taught to language learners. We should pay attention to one point, and that is, in contrast with motivation, attitude, personality, and some other aspects which cannot be taught to learners, language learning strategies are teachable. And this provides an excellent opportunity for teachers and practitioners of language teaching to help their students learn the best strategies and make the best use of these strategies. The correlation analysis showed that the theoretical framework of the study was supported by the empirical findings of the research. Findings of our study provides a very profound understanding regarding the use of language learning strategies among language learners in general and Iranian and Malaysian language learners in particular. So I used a bulk of references. I put a few of them here so that you can see the studies of Ang and Hanafiya, Muliani, Nazri, Rubai, Shi, Simsek. Of course, there were lots more, but I inserted a sample of these references here. Thank you for your attention. So I should tell you that I learned many things myself. I became familiar with the culture of two different countries. Of course, I had some kind of information about my own culture, but I became familiar with a new culture, with new people, interesting features, shared features, and I myself learned a bulk of material. Okay, if it's okay, I give you a 2-minute rest, if it's okay, Mr. Basir, and then we can continue with questions.
Yeah, we are waiting for the questions from
okay.
Participants. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
While waiting for the participants, let me give you some questions. Yeah, about your research. Yeah. You know, as far as I know, that you write some also articles, yeah, in Scopus Index journals. The latest article including the effects of digital storytelling with group on social and emotional intelligence.
Yes.
In the school students.
Yeah, it was in Scopus and ISI of Emerging Type Journal. It was both in this in Scopus and ISI. A few weeks ago, I published that. Exactly.
Every year, yeah, if I'm not, in 2020.
21.
Oh, that is 22, I think. No.
22. A few weeks ago, yeah, it was after. Yeah, it was at the beginning of the new year. A few weeks ago, around 8 weeks ago, I think it was published.
Oh,
Yes. So it was 22.
Yes, my question is not that article. Yeah, my question is relating to how can you find that this research has novelty and then has originality and also so or the state of the art that some people might be interested to read your articles. How can you
Yeah.
raise these research gaps?
You mean the original features of this work, yeah?
I mean the background of your research. How can you find the background of your research, and also how can you get the research gaps for your manuscript, especially these learning strategies. How can you? I mean, how can you find this title and also these research questions?
Okay. Actually, this study was done before the corona pandemic, and I did some other research after that. I mean, after the pandemic was done, but this was related to before that time. Of course, there are some differences between the use of strategies at the time of the pandemic and before that, and again, maybe after that, there may be some differences. For example, with regard to affective strategies, we should know which strategies our students make use of at that time, I mean, at the time before the pandemic. And surely, now that things have changed a lot in the world, so the type of conversation and the type of actually communication between teachers, professors, between students, peers have changed a lot. And that's also the case with the emotions, feelings, the type of interactions they will have. We should also now know that with regard to social strategies, we should know which strategies have been used. Because I don't know what's the case with Indonesia. In Iran, actually this pandemic is actually the rate is being decreased. Maybe our classes become face-to-face classes after the Iranian New Year, because in 2 days time, we have Iranian New Year, and for 2 weeks, we have holidays, and after that, we have our actually classes and students come face-to-face, and that's also the case with previously. So knowing the features, the shared features, and knowing the differences between strategies and the use of strategies at the time of the pandemic and before the time of the pandemic, and again after the time of pandemic, can be revealing to both instructors and to students. That's also the case with social strategies. For getting help, maybe when it was during the time of the pandemic, the students didn't have access to each other. So on the internet or through chatting or through some kind of social media, they had to get in touch with themselves, or for asking their teachers. At the time of the pandemic, for example, they use some kind of softwares, for example, LMS, etc. And I know LMS is used throughout the world. But before the time of the pandemic, if they had some questions and they wanted to pose some kind of question to their professors, they actually referred to their professors in person and they received the necessary help. So we should know about the differences between the situation and the application of strategies during the time of the pandemic, before that, after that, and we can make some kind of comparison and make the most of them. And we can look for the advantages and disadvantages, the merits and demerits that each situation offered, and use the best and most suitable type of strategies to be used in any kind of situation and in any environment and in any context.
Did you get the data during pandemic or before pandemic?
No, regarding that, I didn't put here, but as I said, I worked during the pandemic. I actually collected some data and I'm in the process of analysis. I'm analyzing it and I can make some kind of comparisons between the time of the pandemic and before that.
Okay.
When finished.
There is a question from Lalu Tohir. Could you please explain with specific details about the differences between cognitive and metacognitive learning strategies used in studies?
Yes. Actually, do you want to know about actually the results we found through the observations or through the SEAL questionnaire? Which one does she plan to know, or in general? Explain it so about
in general
differences between cognitive and metacognitive learning strategies used in your study. Yes. For metacognitive strategies, as I told you, maybe I can show you again the results. Will you actually share it with the audience? Is it possible? Screen share. All right, so we shared some features with regard to our interviews. We noticed that practicing, preparing, and creating a structure for input and output were some shared features in our study as revealed from the actually interviews. With regard to our observations, we obtained 114 themes in this study. Okay, if I want to be specific, for example, we found that there are some strategies to talk about and analyze these strategies. We have these shared features, so we went through axials and selective and open coding procedures, and we obtained some results with this regard. And after the analysis through univariate analysis, so we noticed, as you can see, that with regard to metacognitive strategies which are expected to deal with, for example, monitoring learning, with evaluating learning, etc., the themes were more or less different. Now because I got 114 themes, I think it's not possible for me to read all the themes that I got, but maybe I can tell you about the process. Through open coding, actually, I try to identify some of the themes. For example, I had some extracts from observations. For example, Iranian students said students are giving their lectures. 5 students who are in the same group talk about parts of a movie. They show some episodes and keep explaining about the movie. So I understand that the theme related to it is analyzing and reasoning. And then I got another extract from observations, which is on the whole general one. A student in the front row starts reading the excerpt. I'm giving you some instances of that. And that is the theme under which I can put it is practicing. The student asks a question in a quiet tone and the professor answers her question. This is receiving and sending message. So I put them into different categories, then performing a task for another ones. I put them into different categories. And in the next stage, I have the axial coding procedure. For example, I put some sub-themes for the excerpt I got, for example, from Iranian students. I put the sub-themes of lectures, group, movie, episode, etc. And I put a code for that. So which code? For example, the code of analyzing and reasoning. Then student, front row, reading something excerpt. I put the code of practicing. And then I go through that, and then I start with selective coding with this procedure from the observations. I put the main code up, analyzing and reasoning for these Iranian students. Then I have some sub-themes of lectures, groups, episodes, etc. I put my interpretations, for example, explaining about a movie which has been shown to the class. And then I provide some examples for that. And after that, I get my whole categories. So I get the general themes of giving explanations, reading a question, trying to find the answer, asking questions, preparing a summary, and I put major code for each of them, both for Iranian and Malaysian students.
Then, so what is the summary of the differences between cognitive and metacognitive learning strategies?
Yeah, on the whole, metacognitive strategies dealt with Iranian and Malaysian students setting goals regarding monitoring their learning, planning their learning. But for cognitive strategies, for actually producing new language, for interpreting the language, for making questions, for thinking in the language and making some kind of interpretations.
Okay, thank you. Does it answer the question of Lalu Tohir? Does it answer your question, Lalu Tohir?
How many strategies do each learner potentially employ?
How many strategies do each learner potentially employ? What factors affect the choice of strategy within a learner? High use of metacognition, cognitive strategy is important. Does it mean that teacher needs to drive learners to that strategy? How to do so? Yeah, that's the question.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot. Actually, we cannot specify whether or not all learners make use of all the 6 strategy categories in general, and the strategies of direct strategies, indirect strategies, etc. Some of the learners make use of some of them and disregard the other ones. For example, there may be a learner who, while communicating in the foreign language or in the second language, seeks the help of other people when he wants to get a meaning across. So this is the use of social strategies. Or sometimes, for example, a student cannot say something and he asks another peer or a teacher to help him or her. For example, says, I want to talk about a word which means, and then, for example, provides some kind of circumlocution, gives some explanations, and makes use of compensation strategies because she has some deficiencies in knowledge, so she makes use of this kind of strategies. So we cannot say that, for example, this student uses 6 strategies, that student uses 4 strategies. We don't have a fixed rule, but what is important is that teachers can teach the correct use of strategies and a variety of strategies used, which is actually one of the characteristics of successful language learning. Thus, we should ask our students not to be limited and not to confine to a very restricted set of strategies, because language learning strategies pave the way for language learning and make their learning easier and more enjoyable. Therefore, they should make use of a variety of them. We should teach them. We as instructors should teach them about the best strategies that they can use. Of course, they should take into consideration their learning styles. As I told you, we have tactile style, kinesthetic style. For example, a student who actually for learning something should be involved in some kind of action to learn it. Maybe the teacher asks this student more, for example, to play the role of a concept or a character so that this person learns it more. Or maybe there are some students who are more auditory oriented and make use of lots of auditory learning styles. So for these people, maybe professors or even the student himself can provide some kind of auditory material. For instance, he can listen to lots of clips in English, and for clarification of some points, some auditory materials. But some students are more visually oriented and make use of visual learning style. So for these people, if they themselves know their orientation with regard to their learning styles, they can make use of the best strategies to get through the task of learning in the best possible way. As for high use of medical strategies important, it is as said, yes, of course, metacognitive strategies, as I told you, are the higher order executive skills. They help you monitor your learning. They help you evaluate your learning, and they are under indirect learning strategies. They do not directly deal with their language, but it is so important to learn them and to make the best use of them, because through them, you can set your own goals. You can actually watch your learning, put some kind of learning objectives and follow them.
Okay, Sarah Kasafian, actually what you have done, the result is that metacognitive strategies is the mostly used, by students or learners. And then what is the implications for next researchers, based on your research?
Yes, so let me bring it. Of course, for the result of SEAL, I mean Strategy Inventory for Language Learning, we noticed that actually Iranian students were high users of metacognitive strategies, and Malaysian students were high users of metacognitive and social. But with regard to the observations, the results of observation, it was shown that Malaysian students were high users of cognitive strategies. So these are the strategies which were done inside the class. So the instructors and practitioners of language teaching notices that, for example, these Malaysian students are mostly predisposed to make use of cognitive strategies inside their classes. And that's also a very important point for them, because we notice that as teachers, when I want to teach these groups of students, maybe if I try to activate their schemata and make some kind of connections between what they already know with already what I already want to teach, some kind of linkages between them, this way my students flourish. So I, as a professor, try to pay attention to this kind of strategies for this context.
Okay. Any other questions from the participants? I hope. I think students also can give question. Yeah, students of undergraduates.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
So how many participants took part in this webinar on the whole?
65. Now for
okay.
Now 50.
Okay. Actually, if I want to share something with you,
yes.
I noticed some kind of interesting features inside the classes. One of the classes was actually held by one of the professors in Malaysia because she wanted to involve her students in real actually situations. Of course, they were students of literature. They asked them to play roles, and they played the roles of some kind of fictional characters, which the students really loved and adored, and which really helped them. And through that, they made use of some kind of strategies, and that inculcated more in their minds the concept that they wanted to learn and about the fictional characters they wanted to get familiar with.
Okay, so meaning that the students make use of role play.
Yes, that's it. Because in Malaysia, of course, that was done in Malaysia. In Malaysia, I also noticed that there were some kind of teamwork. That was also the case with Iran, but in Malaysia, in the classes that I observed, I noticed that the professor divides her students into 4 groups, and each group was consisted of around 6 students. And in Iran, the students were divided into smaller groups of 3 or 4. Maybe it's a difference of culture, because when they ask the students to whisper to do some kind of teamwork, in Malaysia, they are so quiet, but in Iran, maybe they talk loudly. It's this kind of whispering changes to loud talk. That's why the students were divided into groups of 4, many groups of 4 in the class.
Anyway, how did you take the data? Meaning, did you go to Malaysia to take?
Yes, I went to Malaysia. I lived there for some time. I collected the data. That was also the case with Iran. I showed you the pictures of my professors in my slides. When I was, before my PhD, when I was a master's degree student, these people were my professors several years ago. But I knew them very well. I knew Dr. Saudat. I don't know whether it is being shared or not. I think sharing the screen, my screen, is it being shared now or not yet? Yeah, I knew them, so they were of great help to me, and they helped me with this regard. And also the professors from Malaysia mostly were very friendly, and they helped me a lot, and I'm really thankful to them. I learned how to motivate my students. I learned many things from this Dr. Rayhane, whose picture I'd like to show again, whom I really...
in your observation, did you take pictures only, or did you write down the observations?
In observations? Actually, I recorded the classes. Whatever went on in the class, I recorded, and I took a video recording with me. Of course, I get their permission, and I assured them, I got some letters, and I assured them that the results are just for research purposes. And I remember when I was carrying out my pilot study, one of the professors was, at first she was not very actually happy with the video camera, but after a few sessions, she got used to it and she helped me in this regard. So I tried to record everything. After that, I did some kind of actually transcription in my pilot phase, I recorded whatever went on inside the class. But for main study, I noticed, okay, it's good to record everything inside a class and to write them, try to write them by looking through the films I took from the class and the notes I took from the class. But what is important is try to randomly choose 6 students from each class and put these 6 students behavior as a priority, and I wrote down whatever they did inside the class, and with the help of the camera, I added to my notes whatever was actually needed. Then I gave the transcriptions and parts of the video cameras to some of the experts in the field to check whether they have been correctly transcribed. And then I did some kind of reliability and validity procedures. And when I noticed that it is both reliable and valid, I went on with my studies and I went through the coding procedures of open, axial, and selective coding procedures for observations. As for interview, if you want, I give you some more explanations. For the interviews, I chose on the whole 70 students were involved, and I went to their classes. After each class, I asked the students to actually be involved in the interview. I posed some kind of questions. It was an open-ended one, and they started with answering with the guide I provided them, and they gave me very detailed explanations. Again, because the way they talk was actually fast enough, and I wrote down some points, but I couldn't write down anything, all the things. Therefore, I made use of cameras. So with the use of cameras, I could check my writing, I could add to them. I made the necessary transcriptions. After making all the transcriptions, I gave them to those in the field to check, some samples to check whether my transcriptions were okay. And then I started the analysis of data through the NVivo software. Then I obtained some kind of procedures and some kind of coding was done, and I reached some kind of model in the field.
Okay, I think I will invite some of the participants to give question directly to you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Let's see, Ms. Agnes, or let's say Mr. Norman, or Bu Endang. Come on, if you have any questions, yeah, relating to the manuscripts and presentation, or from other participants, yeah, from other participants, if you have any more questions, yeah. Actually, your research is quite interesting, yeah, because you try to compare the learning strategies in Malaysia and also in Iran, yeah, which there are slight differences, yeah, not meaning that most of the learning strategies used are metacognitive and cognition, yeah, slightly different, yeah, although they are not the same. They are not the same.
Yes, exactly.
In terms of the similar research, yeah, of your research, yeah, did you find any similar research to your study here?
Yes, about one Arab researcher, Wafa Abu Shmais, also conducted similar study, but in a limited context. And in his own country, he noticed that the students were high users of metacognitive strategies. That was also done in Iran. Dr. Rahimi, Dr. Mohammad Rahimi, not Dr. Ali Rahimi, whose picture I showed, did some kind of studies with regard to language learning strategies, and he also noticed that Iranian students were high users of metacognitive strategies. Okay, that's the case with EFL context, of course. And in ESL context, some kind of research were also carried out with different results.
Okay, yeah, I think if we don't have any more questions, yeah.
Can I ask personal question?
Yes, Bu Tarwiya, yeah.
Yeah, okay, this is personal question because I'm going to ask you, but my question is not relation to it. It's not in relation to your presentation. So, do you teach in English education department or any other department?
Yes, sure. I teach to students of medical school. I mean, those students who are trying to be doctors, MDs, medical doctors, and those students who are who plan to be dentists, those students who plan to be pharmacologists, and those ones who are in the field of health and practitioners of health, but I teach them English.
I see.
ESP, yeah, I teach them ESP. So my students are mostly medical majors, students of dentistry, students of public health, and they're kind of that. Not English majors, of course.
Okay, I
Of
see.
course, I have my students, I have some students who are doing some kind of research or some kind of thesis under my supervision. And those students are students of English. They are learning English language. So teaching TEFL majors.
Okay, thank you for the information and for the meaningful presentation.
Nice
And
to meet you.
It shows that you are an experienced teacher and researcher. Thank you.
Thank you so much, kind of you.
Yeah, and also you came to Malaysia just to take the data for the research. Is that correct, or did you have anything?
No, I stayed in Malaysia for a number of years.
For a number of
years.
Yes. Oh.
Yes.
Meaning that you often went to Malaysia for.
Actually, yeah, I have some kind of affiliations and some kind of friends there in Malaysia, and both in Malaysia and in Iran. And actually, before the Corona pandemic, I attended lots of international conferences in different countries. For example, in Hong Kong, I went to countries such as Turkey, to Russia, to Armenia, Dubai, etc. I'm interested in actually taking a trip to different countries and attending some conferences.
What about?
Oh, now I like it, but I can't because of the Corona pandemic. I think I can. Hopefully, I really pray to Allah that this pandemic is over soon. And again, actually, we will have some kind of face-to-face communication with others, experts in the field, with other professors, and that would be great if this happens.
Okay.
So what about Indonesia? How's the case with the pandemic?
I think
is it decreasing or increasing?
Indonesia, especially in my university, I think the pandemic is over. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Meaning that
that's great.
Face-to-face interaction with students in the classroom. Yeah. So all lecturers have to have traditional classrooms. Yeah, in the classroom.
Yes.
Kids in the classroom. Although we still wear masks like this. Yeah. So that's okay. We follow the procedure. But in Indonesia now, if we want to go by plane from one city to another city, we don't have to we don't have to give the what is it? Coronavirus test, yeah, or
Oh, I
test.
see.
No,
Oh,
there is no need, because here,
I see.
meaning that, you know, in Indonesia, this is quite surprising. In Malaysia,
Oh,
you know, pandemic is
I see.
Malaysia.
So,
But in Indonesia, you know, it's surprisingly, yeah, for me, especially in my opinion, it is over in Indonesia, because if we want to
oh,
go,
that's great.
if we go by plane, we don't have to get the test, yeah.
Oh, I see. And have the teachers and students and professors been vaccinated in Indonesia? I mean, the mass vaccination happened?
All students are vaccinated, yeah, all students, yeah.
Oh,
But
okay,
the
that's great.
requirement to go to have face-to-face interaction, they have to be vaccinated first. Yeah. Oh yeah, no PCR COVID test. Yeah, I know. No PCR COVID test.
Okay,
So
that's
yeah,
that's good.
Starting this, you know, this early month. Yeah, starting this early month. I'm also surprised. Yeah, that my friend went to Bali without PCR.
Oh, I see. I've noticed.
Yes.
I've heard that's a very nice, interesting island, Bali. Yeah.
Just to show the certificate for the second vaccine.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So meaning that the pandemic is over here.
Oh, I see. That's also the case in Iran. They ask professors and students to come to some kind of saloons and to be vaccinated against coronavirus disease. So I think over 80% of students, maybe those who do not believe in vaccine, maybe there are very few who do not believe in vaccine, but nearly most of them, over 80%, I'm sure, have been vaccinated, and around 80% of Iranians have also been vaccinated.
Yeah.
And I hope that this pandemic will be over soon in all countries around the world.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Especially Indonesia now. You know, some people might be surprised with Indonesia, because you know it seems that the pandemic is over here.
Yes, that's the case. Thank you.
Are there any more questions from the participant? If there are no more questions, yeah, I will close the webinar. Yeah, and thank you, Sarah Kasofian, and
You're most welcome.
And we are waiting for the manuscript. Yeah, actually.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I will prepare and send it to you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. See you again, Sarah. And
thank you, and all the best to you and all other participants, all the professors, and all those who helped us to actually have this nice webinar. Thank you so much, Mr. Davik, for all your help and cooperation.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Goodbye. Assalamualaikum.
Bye-bye. Walaikum assalam. All the best to you, and bye-bye.